Today, I'm gonna go into some old servers from the early 2010s, see if I can discover some of the server's history and admire some of the stuff that people have made. Some of these had some real interesting stuff, so I hope you enjoy. Now, before I get on with the video, I just want to say that this whole video and this whole concept is directly inspired by a YouTuber named Redline. I'm a big fan of the guy and I just wanted to clear it up that he's the original when it comes to this sort of stuff. With that out of the way, let's move on. The first server we're going to be checking out is called Merchant Villages. Now this one stuck out to me because the server had thousands of votes and it's been around since 2013, but seemingly there was no activity as of late. It's really odd to see servers like this as used to have thousands of players that were active and loved the server, but are now just completely empty. When I loaded in, I decided to read the signs really quick. It told me to go into survival, but first I wanted to quickly check out this big spawn world they had made. The first thing that caught my attention was this big nosed villager face, so I walked through and I immediately ended up next to an IKEA. I really had to check this out. Going inside, it looked more like something you'd find in an urbexing video, as the place was completely trashed. I walked to the back room and I found Frozen and My Little Pony photos, which just shows how old this building probably is. I had seen enough, so I went back out and I flew up and noticed this real goofy guy's face plastered on a few buildings, so I assumed maybe he helped build the spawn or something. I went into the Block Museum and there he is again. Going into the Block Museum, it seems like they were kind of documenting stuff that got added in each Minecraft update, with the last update being 1.17. Just to put that into perspective, 1.17 released almost 5 years ago by now. The rest of the museum was just empty, so I moved on. Fuck. There were a few more buildings like the chest shop. The father. What the fuck? But what I found the most interesting was this merchant area with what I'm pretty sure was community made shops that you could buy it from. I saw moss. That is not moss. Holy shit. The weed man. Oh, it's sold out. Since the weed man was refusing to share the last 8 ball, I decided I wanted to go to the survival world next, which is full of a bunch of nothing. I saw like one farm and that was it. So instead I went to check out some of the warps and they had a lot of them. I went to the bank and they had some real grease balls in there. Penny pincher, number cruncher, money bags. But again, I couldn't really do a lot in the bank since I was just broke. I went to a warp called Bank 2 and they had a really talented set of builders. Like, this was expansive. It's really quite upsetting to think about how the server has 0 players now, but there's so much effort gone into all of these buildings. Next up I went to a warp called Christmas 2016, which had Christmas stuff from 2016. But I also had a bunch of other holiday stuff, such as Thanksgiving. I was now in the creative plot section of the server, as these were all small builds made by separate people. Now, I don't know if this is a recurring or common thing in Minecraft servers, but the server had a bunch of different little subsections around the creative, which all came together really nice. They all had a specific theme, and they even held contests, which I'm about to show you. I thought it was really cool. Teleporting to the first contest area, I could tell that the builders really did put a lot of effort, since the buildings did look really nice, but there were only like 4 builds, the rest was just empty. The next contest had a lot more effort put into it collectively, bigger builds and a lot more builds as well. It was really cool. Now there were a few more of these contest areas, but I didn't want to stay on that for too long, so I just flew around to creative area instead. This one town had a minecart track that went on for ages. Now, despite being able to fly, I think this was still survival and not even part of the creative world anymore, so I think they built this by hand in survival. I could be wrong about that though, since the warps are kind of confusing and warp you between creative and survival all the time. After following the minecart tracks, I ended up at the biggest thing I'd seen so far. This was an entire town and castle with lore books and maps, and there was even a big dining table. It was just really cool. I can only imagine how much time this would have taken, and it looks like there was a big community surrounding this as well. There was also a guest book that I was really happy to see, since I could check when this community was really in its prime. The first messages were from 2020 and the newest one was from 2024, so this is pretty old, but also not too old. I thought it was fitting to leave a message myself, so I did that and I went on with my journey. I also saw this guy again, and I thought this guy was probably the owner, so checking out their Discord, that guy was in fact the owner. I went through the list of warps again, and one that stuck out to me was the mob arena. I hadn't really seen any minigame type of things yet, so I got my hopes up for this one. I chose my loadout, which had like the sharpness 25 on the weapon, so I was ready. I hopped into the arena and I saw these two books that actually had quite a bit of depth to them. There were numerous rewards and different types of waves, and it seemed actually quite detailed.
Ready? Go!
Yeah, okay, no, in the beginning, like, barely anything was spawning yet, so this was really easy. Also, this server had the most obnoxious leveling system ever. The rest of the battle was pretty easy and I was breezing through. That wasn't until after wave 30 when they decided to dump the entire nether population on me. There were just so many enemies. I absolutely could not do anything and I just got mauled. I got out to see if I got any money and oh my god. It was time to spend. Now, as you can see, I didn't actually really buy anything useful, but it was still cool. There was this real shady guy in the corner who was selling diamond tools with some serious markup. I think I'd have to do that mob arena like 10 more times to actually afford some of the juicy stuff here. Before I got off, I wanted to check out one more warp called Mall, and as soon as I teleported, my game started lagging really badly, so I'm sorry if the frame drops get really annoying. But this warp turned out to be really cool actually. There were a bunch of little shops that you could rent out and build yourself. It was actually quite interesting. There was even a nice contemporary art piece someone had made. Also, while I was walking through, randomly a music disc started playing, which was kinda weird. I wanted to see where it was coming from and I eventually traced it back to this small little shop on the bottom. Also, I'm just now realizing that this actually belonged to the owner. I'm just gonna assume that this was probably automated in some way, because I don't think the owner was actually on, but still kinda strange. In conclusion, this server was actually really cool and there was a lot of stuff in it. I'm really surprised that there was nobody on. I even checked back at numerous different times just to make sure it wasn't a time zone issue or anything, but no, nobody got on. The next server is called Lucid Dreams. It says it offers creative, survival, skyblock and much more. Now this one was a bit more niche than the last one, and the server listing also hasn't even been updated since 2013, so this one is probably fully dead by now. What confuses me is that these servers are still actively updated to the newest version of Minecraft. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me since nobody's playing on these. Or so I think anyway. This spawn really had some atmosphere to it. That was until the game decided to yell at me to get a job.
Go and get a job!
I was not planning on getting a job. Instead of sticking around to spawn for too long this time, I decided to just go to the first warp. They had a website, but I checked it out and it was long gone. So the only thing I could do was jump in the big hole. I'm pretty sure this was another creative sort of area, since there were just a bunch of builds I couldn't do anything with. Of course, there was a big pony in the sky right away again. There were actually some pretty impressive builds around here. They all looked like they were built in really old versions of Minecraft since they all used basic blocks. This big building had amazing plastered on every side, so I looked for an entrance. I was expecting to have a maze in there, but there wasn't even an entrance. I had enough, so I decided to warp to the Skyblock next. And yep, it was Skyblock. I was not gonna sit there and play Skyblock. Now this is where things got interesting. The survival actually had quite a bit of bases around, so I actually wanted to explore quite a bit. There was this little house right beside the spawn, but it was protected so I couldn't enter. I walked a bit further and I saw another house, which looked pretty cool, but upon entering I saw it was completely abandoned. So I assumed the owner just probably moved houses and took all his stuff. It got real creepy when this hallway had a bunch of heads on the wall for no reason. I took a few blocks in case I wanted to make a base myself later on, and upon looking further I found this guy's serial killer chest. So I was gonna head out, but first I wanted to sleep, which feels kinda weird to be able to do on a public server. Oh shit. After leaving, I decided to go into the nether portal because just maybe there was something interesting. And that was definitely the right choice because there was another nether portal, so I could easily find another base. There was no way down, so I had to jump, and luckily I just barely survived. I hopped in the portal and I ended up in this base, which seemed to actually have quite a bit of progress. I couldn't actually interact with anything here though, so I still didn't have any food, which I desperately needed. There was a sign that said someone was starting a town. Who knows if it actually got made or not. I went back into the portal and there was actually a lot more portals around, so I had to check all of these out. I went in and there was another base with a fair bit of progress. I looked through the chest to find some food and luckily I did, but I also found a book which was just depressing to read. Matt, I'm going to grind to my heart's content, but there's a problem. You're never on. And I can't solo this forever. If you come back and I'm no longer playing the server, you will know why. In the case of this happening, I will leave my stuff for you. That's actually fucking heartbreaking. What the hell? Roadkill? There wasn't much more to see, so I just went for a run through the overworld instead. Eventually I came across this one base which actually had some loot in it. I wanted to make some armor, but I didn't want to take too much, so I just grabbed one stack. And then I immediately wasted it all on accident. God damn it. So I had to take another extra stack. I wanted to find one more base and then build one myself, so I went back to the spawn so I could quickly find one. There was a small one really close by, but upon entering it seemed like it was actually quite big. It was housing the most amount of chickens ever. They had a big furnace in here and also some bamboo farms which were now empty, but I'm sure that at one point this was a big chicken cooking facility.
Welcome to the Los Pollos Hermanos family.
It was finally time to build my own base. I swam across the lake and then I came across this, an unfinished base. It was perfect. I was gonna finish it and make it my home. So it was time to get to work. I'm just gonna say it now. I am not a good builder in Minecraft. It didn't look very great, but at least it was gonna be home. Okay, just stop the montage. This shit looks like fucking ass. I put the essentials inside and then I was gonna call it with the building. I just wanted some torches, a bed, and then I was done. This server felt a lot older than the other one. It felt a lot more lonely too. I can't explain it, but I feel like Lucid Dreams is quite a fitting name for this server. I quite liked it actually, and it seems at one point there were quite a few friends that hopped on the server together, but are now long gone. I wonder how long it's been since there was actually an active group here. I googled the server to see if maybe they had a website or a forum somewhere, but I didn't find anything. This next section will be a bit shorter, but I thought I'd still include it since I was quite impressed by the builds they had. You'll see in a moment what I mean. Before I get into it, I want to show this website that the server had. There's announcements like anniversaries and server updates, but the website hasn't seen a new announcement in 4 years. The oldest announcement was 14 years ago when the server just began, so this is an old one. Like I said, the builds in this server were really cool. The spawn was actually a big city with a lot of detail. I'm not sure if this is based on an existing city, but it still looks really nice. The interior of this cathedral had some crazy detail. I mean, just look at this. Going outside there was a huge plaza with another huge building, but it seemed like the interior was kind of unfinished. I then went to check out the actual server since that was all just the spawn area, but going into the survival again, there was like nothing to be found. I tried a random teleport like 5 different times, but every time I just couldn't find anything. I just went to the creative area instead, and this had some more crazy buildings. Like, some of these must have took very long to build. Overall, this server had some very nice builds, and I hope the people who made this keep it up with this type of stuff, because it's actually really impressive. Now, before anything else, I want to say that I'm pretty sure this server isn't actually dead, and better yet, I actually hope the community is still around, because the backstory and the contents of this server were really quite wholesome and I just had to cover it. Started back in August 3rd of 2012, Towncraft has always been a safe place for players of all ages to enjoy Minecraft. Towncraft was initially created by Colgraph as a small Minecraft server for him and his kids that also offered a welcoming community for other players who wanted to play Minecraft without having to worry about bullying, harassment or profanity. Towncraft was resurrected in mid-2019 and is now owned by Script Junkie, a developer of the original server by Colcraft. If that isn't the most wholesome reason to make a Minecraft server, then I don't know what is. Also, there were some dedicated players on this one. The owner had over 12,000 hours, which is almost 1.5 years. This server had to be something special. I loaded in and they had a pretty nice hub world. I was definitely a fan of the dark night sky they had going on. They also used Hypixel's mystery boxes, which was a bit of a throwback. And they had a quite detailed selection of modes. But most of them, when I tried to join, they didn't actually work. Only a few of them teleported me somewhere and the rest didn't do anything. The survival had a whole new hub which also looked pretty cool. They also had pressure plates which made you big or small, so I had to make myself massive. The random teleport command didn't seem to work, so I thought maybe I had to use a different command, but the game got real sassy when I tried to do /help. But eventually I noticed some text that said I should do /warp history, so I did and I got sent to something really cool. This was basically an archive of all the best builds that had been made on the old version of the server. It was all very cute, and even though I never played on the old server, I'm really glad they saved the old stuff like this. There was even an old screenshot put into map art, pretty cool. Now, I went into the castle and I saw a memorial for the owner's father. Of course, I didn't know anything about the guy, but I hope he rests well. After this, I figured I'd check out some more of the warps he had made. I first went to one called Farm since I was running low on hunger. It was actually really sweet. It was a community made farm that everyone could take from. So I took some crops for myself, making sure to replant everything as I went on. Next up I went to Colmart cause that sounded pretty interesting. It was a big recreation of Walmart and it was even functional, you could buy items from it. They even had a little food court and everything. It seems like they had a lot of fun making this. I got an idea, so I had to buy a piece of golden equipment. This is gonna make sense later, trust me. Before going on with that though, I wanted to check out some more stuff because so far everything had been really awesome to see. I went to Coldbox this time. There was this cage in the corner requesting me to give snowballs and poisonous potatoes to a special guest, but he obviously wasn't here anymore. I'm guessing there was some sort of troll in here or maybe just one of the admin's friends. Speaking of the admins, they were all listed up here on the second floor, which was pretty neat. Now I went to Crafting City so I could go ahead with that little idea I had. Not before checking out the place itself though, which was a cozy little castle village thingy. It seemed like the owner helped build this place. With the secure gate they had over here, I hope this was some sort of sanctuary created to protect the community. It's really heartwarming to think about. I got myself some basic tools so I could get a furnace to smelt a golden shovel into a little piece of gold. I was gonna throw this into the wishing fountain because I thought it'd be a nice gesture. It seems like they had actually planned for this, since to my surprise there were actually hoppers in the fountain. I also had to check out the FNAF 4 warp, which was as expected a recreation of the bedroom from the game. The game told me to, which was a bit creepy. Walking around it was actually quite an accurate recreation of the game, with the hallways, animatronics. I liked it. When I left, the game started telling me more stuff. It seems like every now and then the higher ups would drop sort of voucher books which you can hand in here for rewards. While walking, I came across this big temple looking building. It had a bunch of giant recreations of different mobs and animals inside. It seems like this served as some kind of XP farm, but I couldn't find where the XP ended up. I wanted to go to one last warp, and after that I would get off. The mansion sounded interesting, so I went with that. I'm guessing this was some sort of big home for all the admins of the server. I went inside and there were these levers that I think would play songs, but sadly they didn't work. There was also a big Netflix TV, a bedroom with some big dogs, and a cat room with some more big dogs, and also some cats. I felt like I had explored most of the server and I had been on for a while at this point, so I figured this would be a good spot to get off. I was quite a fan of the server as it seemed really friendly. I also checked out their website again a day later and it seems like there's still some regulars that got on from time to time, so that's nice to see. I hope the owner and his kids are doing okay. Check this one out. It's pretty cool. Now this one really confused me. Supposedly this isn't the original version of the server but a re-upload that some guy had pulled from his hard drive and put online. But when I checked their website it had a much different looking spawn, but it did have the same builds. So if anyone knows more, I'd love to know. The spawn was located on the beach and it was really quite cozy. There were some chests to buy from which didn't work anymore. The re-upload had no plugins, so this was pure vanilla. This also meant that I could interact with everything and break anything. I wasn't gonna abuse this, but I did use it sometimes because it actually helped quite a bit with exploring and getting into buildings. For example, this admin room, I could just break in. So I entered and there wasn't actually that much of interest, apart from this chest which had books that people actually wrote in to request to become an administrator. Next up I went to the hotel's top floor. I thought there'd be a penthouse, but it was just more small rooms. Some of these guys had some top tier loot though, so I had to take some. Now I just wanted to explore around a bit because I had basically seen the entire spawn. I wanted to see if maybe I could find another hub area or something like they had on the old website. I came across a few houses, but it wasn't like anything I was looking for. I was still gonna check out all of these builds of course, but it wasn't my main focus right now. These houses looked like they were built a long time ago, which was nice to see because of the differences in this map and the old one. Since at this point I wasn't even sure if this was the real old map and not just some new recent one. To be honest, it felt kinda strange to sleep in these beds, since these belong to completely different people from like 10 years ago. After looking around a bit more, I went on, and I was walking for quite a long time. And despite how long I walked, I came across nothing, apart from one building which looked like it could have potentially become something cool, but sadly it was just empty now. The only one thing that I saw was one of the old villages which I thought was cool, but that's not really anything special. So this begs the question, what the hell was going on with this server? I was really hoping someone random would join and maybe have some answers, but nobody did. The only possibilities I could see is that maybe this was just one small section of the original world and they just built some of the same stuff in different locations. Or this was just a collection of important builds put together in one location instead of being a direct copy of the original world. In any case, I'd really love to find out, so if anyone knows then please let me know. With that, we've reached the end. I just want to say I'm sorry if anyone plays on these servers, and I'm not trying to attack the server by saying it's completely dead or worthless or anything. It's nothing like that. I'm sure that most of these still have small but dedicated communities, and I mean absolutely no harm. I just found it really difficult to find some interesting servers that weren't extremely new, had an interesting backstory, but had 0 players. Most of the servers I found were still a bit active, so I really had to handpick some gems. And of course, these servers have to be kept running with money, so no servers that are still running are truly 100% abandoned because someone's still paying for them. I hope you enjoyed me exploring all these worlds, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.